Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today's talk this morning. Sorry, I don't know why I forgot this morning. This is the first talk in the series that is called KALΑ times ASAP. And we are very excited to host this talk that is Inspiring Change, KALA's Role in Sri Lankan Art History, which is between the founder of KALA, Saskia Fernando, and the managing director of Christie's Middle East, Meagan Kelly Horsman. I'm just going to let it go and let these ladies talk about what they need to talk about. But thank you so much for attending and passing over to them.
Thank you very much, Noor. Saskia, I'm sure that everybody in the room already knows who you are, but for sake of posterity, let's say, would you introduce yourself and a little bit about your background?
Before we begin, I would just like to very quickly thank KALA's founding partner, Cinnamon Life City of Dreams, our official banking partner, HNB, our exclusive media partner, Vijaya Newspapers, the Rukmini Thissanayagam Trust, and the Udeshant and Angelica Fernando Foundation, as well as all our other partners and patrons of KALA. I would also like to welcome the students of our youth program who are here today with us from the University of Jaffna, the Svarni Vipulananda Institute of Aesthetic Studies, Vatiklo, Peradeniya University, Kelaniya University, and the Visual and Performing Arts University of Colombo. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. And all of you, thank you everyone for waking up this morning and joining us. Really wonderful to have this first conversation of our KALA times ASAP together.
So who are you, Saskia Fernando?
I've been a gallerist, first and foremost, for the last 16 years. I established my gallery, Saskia Fernando Gallery, in 2009 in Colombo. And the intention of this space was to create a freestanding gallery, a representative space in Colombo. And more recently, my role has been in the development space in the arts community locally. And this is via the platform KALA that we're celebrating over these days together with you.
Amazing. So when I was thinking about what I'd ask Saskia today, I thought, I think we all feel we maybe know Saskia and your family because of Paradise Road and its legacy. So, from its foundation in 1987, becoming a place where people can collect design, jewelry, fashion, art throughout everything that you do. I was curious why you opened Saskia Fernando Gallery in 2009. And then also I'd love to hear more about how Paradise Road and Saskia Fernando Gallery have combined and sort of merged together in this very beautiful new space on the Gull Road in Colombo.
So why I opened the gallery in 2009, I always wanted to work in the arts, and I had the privilege of being able to access established contemporary practitioners because of my father's collecting, and also having worked at his gallery, Paradise Road Galleries, prior to establishing my own space. And when I was working in his gallery, I had the honor of collaborating with artists who were presenting exhibitions in the space. But then after the exhibitions, essentially, they went back to, teaching at the university, other jobs they had. And I could see immediately that there was a need for representation all year round. The formal gallery space that so many of us understand is the norm, but in fact, in South Asia, it's not necessarily the case. And having had the opportunity to travel and learn about the international art world, I was very keen to begin this model in Sri Lanka. There were already a good handful of galleries, barefoot, established in the 70s, where we began our programming for KALA, and Paradise Road Galleries, where I had had my experience. But the intention was with the space to professionalize. And Poojan in the audience recently curated a wonderful panel conversation that forced it at India Art Fair, where it sort of forced me to look back on this journey. And I realized then that as I began, it was really about professionalizing. And what's interesting now is over the last 16 years, I think your journey as a gallerist changes maybe even every 5 years. So at the beginning, it was really about creating this professional environment, this representation, and formalizing relationships, you know, being the sole representative. And as we developed, I think we've had a strong influence on the local art scene. I'm confident to share that now. You know, things have changed so much over the last 16 years. But more recently, I think what we've learned is the space that we have at SFG is very much Sri Lanka based. And while we go to art fairs in India, what we really want to do in Sri Lanka is in Sri Lanka. That's fine. Nice ringtone. So what we want to do is focus in Sri Lanka and be a Sri Lanka-based gallery. We've always focused on Sri Lankan contemporary practitioners, also collaborated a bit with South Asian practitioners. So moving forward 16 years, very recently, we merged. We called it a merger. It sounds very, you know, sophisticated. While in fact it was a quite simple decision. We had, my family built a building, which we began building 9 years ago. It's a very long time. And several months ago, my father finally decided that we would open this building. And it was always intended to be a space that housed all our initiatives. So my sister is in the design space, I'm in the art space, my family is in the hospitality and retail space, family business, Paradise Road. So this building was always intended to house all our initiatives, bring us together as one family working in one space. So I told my father that I would create Paradise Road galleries in his space, because obviously, you know, what he has done with the arts has been such a huge example to, and learning in what I do with the arts community. And as we started to speak to artists, we realized that in fact they wanted to work with SFG. They saw the value in Paradise Road. And it became clear to me that I no longer needed this identity that led me to call the gallery Saskia Fernando Gallery. And I was a young adult needing my identity, a separate identity from Paradise Road at the time. And it was sort of this very full circle moment where I felt that it made sense to merge. Of course, Paradise Road Saskia Fernando Gallery is a very long name, so we just decided to make it PRSFG.
It does roll off the tongue a little bit better. Could you tell me a little bit about the foundation also that your family have set up, your father and mother's names? We visited last night to see the beautiful Ali Kazem sort of survey exhibition, which was fantastic. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work the foundation's doing.
So I think what's really interesting in the way we work within the art space, even if we're running a commercial art gallery, a lot of us and gallerists in the audience, I'm sure, will agree. A lot of what we do is focused on the development of the local arts community. It's not just about engaging with collectors and presenting exhibitions, representing artists. A lot of what we do sits outside that space, at least what we try to do. And over the last 16 years, we've been running other programs. I was invited to present several fundraisers. We started doing silent auctions. We've done them in aid of the School for the Deaf and the Blind. And then at a certain point, I realized I need to start fundraising for the arts community. Because in the arts community, we need funding. We don't have that access to funding via the government. So this initiative of A4A, which you see on the screen at the moment, is A4A is Artists for Artists. And it was an initiative that we established during COVID. And artists texted me during COVID and they said, Saskia, we want to donate our work to help other artists who are struggling at the moment. It became a bit of a trend after we started all these silent auctions, to be honest, to ask artists to donate works to raise money. And there was a certain point when I kind of felt like, how much can we ask artists to just give their works? Like, everyone needs to make money, have an income from their works. So how much can we keep asking for donations? So we started the A4A, and the first edition that we ran was actually prints, limited edition prints of their works. And that raised a reasonable amount for a fund that we began, a production fund, where the money went back to artists who were appointed by an independent judge panel. And they were mentored by wonderful friends who we have in the art world, including Sonal Singh, who's in the audience here, Noor Aslam. We asked our friends to be on the judge panel, and then we asked artists and practitioners who could relate to the practice of these young artists to mentor them over the period of 6 months. So we began this production grant. During COVID, we also started a talks program online to highlight the people who were engaged with Sri Lankan art. In fact, I think it's oftentimes not necessarily seen because we're on an island, we're a smaller art world, how many people are actually engaging with our local arts community. So we created this talk platform in an effort to highlight that, and it was really successful. But at a certain point, we started to realize we're doing a lot of initiatives, but we kind of also need to focus on the commercial gallery space because we have a responsibility to present the artist's work, we have a responsibility to connect with collectors, and that kind of has to be our focus. So the Sri Fernando Foundation, as it was established initially, was to formalize these efforts. It was to create a space where we could pay homage to what my father was already doing with the arts. He mentors young artists. He's been doing it since the very beginning. He's incredibly passionate about working with young artists. So this was sort of a way for us to bring everything together and formalize that. And a couple of years after that, my mother passed. And my sister and I decided that we wanted to rename the foundation with my mother's name because everything in our family business has always been our family working together. And my mother was such a huge support to all of us, truly. And my father wouldn't have been able to do the work that he did in Paradise Road without her. So we changed the name of the foundation, and essentially now we do everything with this organization. And now we are sort of at this point where even with KALΑ, it's the foundation that is backing this space.
Amazing, thank you for that. My next question seems kind of stupid now, but I was thinking about, where did you come up with the idea of KALΑ? And how long did it take to get from concept to execution? And why did you do it in the way that you did, the particular model? But I know that obviously this rooting in the foundation, now you explain it, makes so much sense. So maybe we can start with, where did the bright spark of KALA come from?
It doesn't really, it's a really good question actually, because everything that I'm telling you has been happening in parallel. It's not like it happened in the most organized way, to be honest. We started the foundation, it changed in form, it's probably still changing in form. KALA was a little idea that began as Colombo Art Week, and I remember presenting to a bank with this idea several years ago. And that presentation, which I had on my computer that I would share sometimes with mentors that I have in the art world, it kept changing. I have really wonderful sounding boards and friends who really give me good advice. And before KALA even became a reality, it was just changing in form. And like I said, it began as an Art Week idea. It was with the intention of bringing people into Sri Lanka and creating more of a art space, creating more of a arts community locally, a stronger arts community locally, to be honest. And there were a couple of years where, and it was already named at this point, it was KALA for sure. I had with one of the collectors that I work with actually approached somebody to take it on because I couldn't. I have a daughter who's really young and I was worried about the pressure of taking something else on. And I got a call from the Lionel Wendt Memorial Fund and they wanted to work with a curator on an exhibition in the center. And I said to them, well, I have a project in the pipeline and this is a huge opportunity for us to launch it. Let's work together. So the first edition of KALA was at the Lionel Wendt Memorial Fund, as you remember, at the Lionel Wendt Art Center. And in this first edition, we were able to really begin, essentially, I think I'm answering more questions than you asked at this point.
That's perfect. Okay, so we know where it came from. How has it changed? You know, last year was the first edition, and for me, coming back this year, attending both, I feel really privileged to see how it's developed and altered and how more people want to be involved, which is a very good sign of a very good thing, in my opinion. One thing that I think I really see as true for both is this sense of deep connectivity and like authenticity of the people that attend and want to be part of this. Because, you know, we all on the art world circuit tend to go to lots of openings and talks and events. But I think here, every year I've met some interesting people and stayed in contact with them, and new collaborations have kind of been born out of it. And I see now with what you're doing with KALÀ, to see, you know, the change in the exhibitions and the way that they work. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and working with the curators.
So the reason we called ourselves a platform was we wanted to have the freedom to change in form. Something I felt, before I answer this question, something I felt quite clearly from my experience of taking Sri Lankan art to the international stage was that something wasn't fitting, something didn't really work for us, something didn't really connect with how things function in the South Asian art world. And from having so many connections in the South Asian art world, I knew that these were sort of shared observations. And there was no format. I didn't want to restrict us with a format. Obviously, the Lionel Wendt Art Centre gave us an opportunity to present exhibition. So that almost happened naturally.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to work with a young curator. I spoke to Sandhini, who I had met a couple of years prior to, and I knew that if we worked with a young curator, we'd need to have a senior curator advising. And I said, Sandhini, will you mentor? And she said, yes, love the idea. I said, we've got this opportunity. We want to present an exhibition of modern and contemporary Sri Lankan. We want to create programming around it. So that was how the first bit came together. In this year, our form has morphed. We're now working with the university, but we saw an opportunity to continue Pivot Glide Echo and this research into modern and contemporary practice in Sri Lanka. We oftentimes tend to reference the 43 group. Of course, their importance in the historical landscape of Sri Lankan visual arts is, you know, everybody's fully aware of that, but there's so much further research that needs to continue and needs to be brought to the forefront. So Pivot Glide Echo has that objective. We also felt that we wanted to present programming that brought practitioners in from South Asia. Actually, initially our idea was to have a South Asian exhibition. The logistics of that were a nightmare. We knew that wasn't going to be possible to access that kind of funding. We do have a goal to focus on raising money locally via local corporate, and it wasn't feasible. So how do we change that? So we had the idea to begin a residency program. And here we were with the University of Visual Performing Arts, who would be able to facilitate that. So this progression into the residency program and KALÀ Commune, the exhibition that is now on at the University of Visual and Performing Arts, is the natural progression of this connection we now have with the university for this year. And it's our way to connect with South Asia, because as you can see, KALÀ is tagline, a platform for South Asian art. Why is that? We want to connect with the region. I don't think we have an objective to be purely about Sri Lankan practice. While we are in Sri Lanka and we want to highlight that, we also want to connect with the region, and that's incredibly important to this platform.
I think that definitely comes across in the work that you're doing and in the exhibition in particular of KALÀ Commune. I was wondering a little bit about the lack of global recognition, let's say, of South Asian art, and your, through your different experiences working in a gallery, having your own gallery, opening, a platform for South Asian art, how do you feel that, the global world can look more to Sri Lanka, and is that a goal for KALΑ to obviously bring people here? How do you see that kind of expanding, or where do you see the challenges for, a global look of South Asian art?
I think it again comes back to the reason why I was motivated to begin KALΑ. And I had the opportunity to present at Frieze in the invited section that Sandhini curated. And I applied to participate in the second year, even though it wasn't feasible. And I was rejected. So it led me to ask the question, why are we invited and then not able to access? But also, this is probably a good thing because it's not really feasible for us. So that moment was really important for me because I realized it didn't make sense to try and access something that was so difficult to access, and also how many other spaces, galleries, institutions even, in the region are experiencing the same problem. And then I thought, well, Sri Lanka is definitely positioned in an ideal space where we're accessible to all the countries in South Asia. That's something really important. How do we get people here? I'm happier when I'm based in Sri Lanka and not running around to art fairs. It's
Me
also
too.
personal. Love going to India Art Fair, love going to India. But it's always great to be at home. And I know from all the friends we have in the art world that everyone loves visiting Sri Lanka. Meagan, how many years have you been visiting? Pre all of these art events, we now give you an excuse to come back for. But we're an ideal location in the region. So why not bring people here? Aren't we able to speak so much louder when everybody's in our space? We can have these conversations, we can engage with one another. We can bring so many practitioners to the forefront in this moment because we're here together. It gives us such an opportunity to highlight. And I think the future of these issues that we face in the international space, I think the solution is in collaboration. I'm so happy to have so many galleries with us for this edition of KALΑ. We're connecting as many of them as we can with artists, getting studio visits organized. We want to collaborate. I don't think I was that open to collaboration at the beginning of the gallery. I was a little bit,
I don't know.
Well, no, we did collaborate. We did. It's true. We've consistently worked on collaborations, but where we take a step back and we say, well, what about co-representation? You present the artist in your space. It doesn't. There are solutions to this. We're going to be based in Sri Lanka, but you present internationally. And I think that's actually the future for galleries all over the world. It makes more sense if we're working regionally with our collector base, with our audience, and that way we cover more ground. So KALΑ also facilitates that. We also have a wonderful opportunity with this to bring in institutions. We need more attention from institutions. So we have institutions here. We have big institutions here. That's amazing. It's exciting, and it's a benefit for all of us, not just Sri Lankan art. It's a benefit for all our artist communities. So the more artists we can bring in from South Asia for this event, as well as representatives, I think that's going to be something we want to start focusing on.
That's amazing, thank you. And I was laughing, the reason I laughed when she said that she wasn't interested in collaborating is, here is a product of our collaboration in 2013 in Dubai, when Saskia and I worked on a show together of Sri Lankan contemporary art called Temporary Permanence. I'm sort of questioning some of my curatorial choices here at this time, but it is fun to see these images again. We can share more details.
But it's
with people.
interesting to see also the early works of now really established contemporary practitioners. And we worked with XVA Gallery for several years, in fact, over various different presentations of solo. And we have consistently done that over the years. That's true. You're right.
I would say as well, just quick observation from what you were saying with the aspect of fairs and being invited and then not perhaps being able to return a following year, and actually there may be perhaps being a bit of happiness and beauty in that. That's certainly something that I see and hear a lot also from the Middle Eastern art world. Like, is this a space for us? Yes, sometimes we're invited for specialist projects, but not with consistency. And to, like, in that way, reflect on it and say, I'll make my own way and we'll do our own thing. And I think you really have the spirit of that. So definitely an interesting model and wonderful to see, as you say, many institutions here this year and last year as well. So I'm checking my questions to see, because I feel we've kind of moved around a little. Collaborations we've kind of touched on. I'm wondering, something I've seen a little bit more this year with KALÀ is also collectors kind of sharing a little bit more about their journey and the pieces that they have. Do you think that sort of that patronage, collectorship is something that can inspire the next generation? And how do you think it sort of supplements what you're doing with the platform?
Patronage is so, so important to all our arts ecosystems. We're really excited this year to have started our KALÀ patronage program. And one of our patrons, Peter Harris, is in the audience. Does anyone else put your hand up? Sorry. But we're really grateful to have such wonderful patrons who play a very, very integral role in the development of KALÀ. The programming that we present is very much focused on highlighting the community outside of just the exhibition and the residency program. So we were talking about this. KALÀ seems to now have taken 3 very key pillars that I feel that we will continue with. While it may not be a 7-artist residency in one particular go, while we will not have the opportunity to collaborate with the university on this scale because it's their 75th anniversary this year, we will probably continue in some way. So I think for us, I know your question was about patronage, but I just want to touch on these three pillars, because the exhibition of modern contemporary has a very key purpose.
Yeah.
The residency, which will change in form but will continue, is very important because of the connection with the region. And the programming as well, connecting with collectors, connecting with patrons, and creating, after the first edition, one of our patrons said, KALÀ is like a catalyst, because there's so many things happening as a result of, even locally. Not necessarily with KALÀ, but as a result of, and that's really important. But one thing I wanted to highlight as well, sort of connected to patronage, is that we have been able to connect with patrons in each region. And one thing that we did with this KALÀ commune residency is ask the advisors. So for example, from Nepal, we connected with Sangeeta Thapa, the founder of Kathmandu Triennial. And she advised on who the artist could be for the residency from Nepal.
Oh,
and as a result, we formed an exchange where she will invite a Sri Lankan artist across. We connected with Hampi Art Labs in India, where we formed an exchange that will happen over the next year. With Dhaka Art Summit, who gave us access to our madrasa, we formed an exchange. We're working with Art Alive Foundation as well, who was kind enough to organize and introduce us to Chandrabhat Chatterjee. So we've created these connections with other patrons, and those collaborations are what is going to help us grow, essentially. So patronage is incredibly important.
Absolutely, and it's amazing to hear about how all of those connections are realizing into really important work that will be very meaningful to a lot of artists, curators, and the infrastructure overall. I think, we often see the world in the sort of more commercial art world. We see it as so black and white. Auction houses do this, fairs do this, galleries do this. but actually without each other, the ecosystem doesn't really work. And of course, patrons are a huge, huge part of that. I think Nora's trying to tell me to move along. Yeah, okay, in a very polite way. What did I have? Let's see. I would say this year, the talk program, and last year, I found both really incredible. I mean, obviously, we're speaking now, so that sounds a little bit conceited, but absolutely fantastic programming. But I do think it is amazing, and I'd love to hear more about how your partnerships evolved with regards to curating the talk program, bringing different speakers with ASAP and Asia Society.
I mean, I keep saying this to Noor and Mala. We would not have been able to do this without them. KALΑ grows because of collaboration.
Yeah.
Our intention is not to build a massive team that works all year round to get this done. It's about collaborating with different organizations, bringing us together, creating spaces that are important for other organizations. So what does ASAP want to do in Sri Lanka?
Yeah.
I think that's been something that really worked for us. We were from the very beginning when Noor was like, yes, I want to do this. It was about, okay, well, it has to align with the other organization. So how do we have these mutually beneficial relationships? And I'm so happy to have ASAP back this year. We're really grateful for all their support. It's really been a huge element of our programming, a very important one. And ASAP has been a really, really solid sounding board for us in terms of building the rest of the program. And that's really important. Working with Asia Society for the first time this year is also great. I mean, they've started their talks, they're able to do the award ceremony for the Pakistani Karachi La Jamia, who will be awarded today in Sri Lanka because they weren't able to visit for the Game Changer Awards. I mean, these are opportunities, these are what these organizations need. So how can we facilitate? I think we want to be a facilitator. We want to work with organizations that can use this platform that we're building and find more and more ways for collaboration, more and more organizations we can do that with, and grow via that. I think that's our intention. That's why we're a platform. That's how we see ourselves, year on year progressing.
So last question from me, and a slightly unfair one, seeing as we're only in day 3 of this year's edition, but what can we expect from 2026?
Not unfair at all, because one thing I wouldn't say we did wrong. I mean, you learn as you go. But I didn't have a team that was able to start thinking about the next year the minute we wrapped up last year.
Yeah.
But now I have wonderful Michelle, who's taken everything on, and we've already started thinking about next year. We've already started facilitating residencies for next year, thinking about how we can do things different. And I think it's important to do that as you go, because the observations come immediately the minute you start programming.
Yeah.
I think this annual event takes a very important form, but it's not an easy thing to schedule on the global calendar. So how are we going to do that? It's going to take a few brainstorming sessions, if not many. Yaroslav is nodding. Because we want everyone back. I'm just saying that now. But residency space, how we can now activate these exchanges we've formatted. How can we do more with the artists we've had with us? I mean, it's just been a month, but there's so many conversations we need to continue. How can we now work with all these wonderful people who have come? There's so many ongoing conversations. There's a lot of work to get down to. I mean, we don't have enough time to take a long holiday after this, actually. It's exciting. It's exciting. Where we will be is the big question, because first year Lionel Wren Art Center, second year University of Visual and Performing Arts, and that, to be honest, we don't know yet. So that's the exciting one that hopefully we can announce sooner than later.
So we look forward to then a new location, artist-led activities and collaborations, and some more innovation from an amazing 3rd edition, I'm sure, next year. So thank you very much, Saskia, for answering my questions.
Thank you, Meagan.
And being a good sport.